All right, so this is the key to worksheet number 2, dealing with topic 9. And in these two problems, you're given one of the endpoints and you're given the midpoint, and you want to find the other endpoint. Now, the idea behind this is this, and so remember the midpoint formula is this. So the midpoint formula says that if you have two endpoints, x1, y1, and then x2, y2, okay? So these are end points. So these are end points. So the idea is this: if you're given two endpoints, then the midpoint, the point in the middle of the segment joining these 2 points, is this. So your midpoint will equal of these 2 points will equal x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay? All right, so we're going to use that idea. We're going to use that idea with these two problems. Okay, I'm going to use this idea to find the other the other end point. You're given one, you got to find the other. Okay, so let's look at number 1. So number 1, you have that one of your end points is this. It's -3, 7. And your midpoint, the midpoint of the segment that joins this endpoint and another endpoint, is 4, -6. All right, now the way I would do this is this. So let's call this endpoint, remember your endpoints have these coordinates. So this is your first, this is your second. So let's call this, and it doesn't matter which one you use, let's call this my second one. So let's call this x2, y2. All right, and we want to find the other endpoint, and let's call that x1, y1. All right, so according to the formula given this right here, I can say x1, so the x coordinates added together, so x1 plus the -3 divided by 2, and then y1 plus 7 divided by 2. And that's going to equal the midpoint, which we know is 4, -6. All right, now we know that to get 4, I use this right here. So what that means, this statement means, is that this x coordinate and this x coordinate have to be equal. So that means that x1, now I'm going to write, see how I have x1 plus the -3? I want you to remember that means the same thing as x1 minus 3 divided by 2 is equal to 4. Okay, so these x coordinates are equal together because that's the midpoint and that's the midpoint, and they're supposed to be equal to each other. And then the same thing with the y coordinates. The y coordinates have to be equal. So y1 plus 7 divided by 2 has to equal -6. So when doing these two problems, each one's going to involve you setting up two equations. And then to get x by itself here, see the least common denominator is 2. So let me go ahead and rewrite this over. So you multiply both sides by 2. So these 2's divide out. So you get x1 minus 3 is equal to 8. And then adding 3 to both sides, you get x1 to be 11. So there's your x coordinate of your other end point. Do the same thing here. y1 plus 7 divided by 2 equals a -6. Multiplying both sides by 2, since the LCD is 2, I get these 2 divide out. I get y1 plus 7 is equal to a -12. Subtract 7 from both sides. The other y coordinate is, or the y coordinate of the endpoint is going to be a -19. So the answer is this: the other endpoint is 11, -19. So remember, the x coordinate goes first, the y coordinate goes second, xy. Okay? All right, so that was number 1. And then you just do the same thing with number 2, same idea with number 2. So number 2, we have, except this time I have a fraction involved. So we have that one of the endpoints is -6, -1. All right, and the midpoint you're given is 5, -7/2. So that's your x coordinate of the midpoint. That's the y coordinate of the midpoint. And I know that I want to find the other end point, right? So let's call that x1, y1. So if I'm finding the other endpoint, then I'm going to label this x2, y2. And so now I'm going to use this into my midpoint formula. So the midpoint formula is where you add your x together. So x1 plus a negative 6 divided by 2, and then y1 plus a negative 1 divided by 2. And that midpoint has to equal this midpoint. So it's going to have to equal 5, negative 7 halves. And so now all you do is you set the x coordinates equal to each other, and then you set the y coordinates equal to each other. Okay? And so you get x1 minus 6. Now remember, x1 plus a negative 6, same thing as x1 minus 6. Divided by 2 equals 5. And then the other one will be y1 minus 1 divided by 2 equals a negative 7 halves. All right, now getting rid of the fraction, we multiply both sides by 2, just like this. I get these two divide out, so I get x1 minus 6 equal 5 times 2 is 10. Adding 6 to both sides, I get x1 to be 16. So I found the x-coordinate of the other endpoint. So I know now that's going to be 16. Okay, let's look at the next one. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this over. And so again, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. The LCD is 2. And then these 2's divide out. These 2's divide out. And so you get y1 minus 1 is equal to a negative 7. Add 1 to both sides. I get y1 equals to a negative 6. And so therefore the other end point is 16 comma negative 6. All right, and so that is the key to second worksheet of topic 9.